Tariff deadline comes this week. Any chance the president makes a change at the Fed before Powell's term ends?
Well, I don't know, Trey. So far, the president has made it clear that he's not really thinking about firing the Fed chair, which there's differing views on about the legality of that. But, you know, so far he's been asked that question a number of times, and he said that's not something he's really thinking about right now. But he is concerned about the management of the Fed at the operating level. You know, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent earlier this week said there should be a full review of all non-monetary policy items that are going on at the Fed, all of the governance of everything from the operating budgets, which is running a $100 million deficit a year, the first time in history, to the construction project, obviously, that we've been talking about. But most importantly, what the president wants is he wants to see rates come down. A number of the Fed governors agree that rates should come down. So far, Jerome Powell has been too late. There's a reason he's got that nickname. He hasn't significantly lowered the rates. And I think it's important to point out, Trey, this time last year, when the economy was in a worse position, everybody was calling for rate cuts, including every Democrat. Now the Democrats are silent now that President Trump is in office, but the economy is better now than it was a year ago. So it doesn't really make any sense, but the president is optimistic with a committee meeting coming up this week that we will start to see the rate cuts that he strongly believes, the president strongly believes the economy should have.
All right, so balance this for me. There is good that comes from reduced borrowing costs with the potential for inflation or the impact that it has on those who rely on safe investments in retirement. So that's kind of the tension. The president has been pushing for cuts. Is there an argument on Powell's side? Is there an argument that it could be inflationary or might lower investment returns for people who invest in Treasury notes and things like that?
Well, look, it's an interesting question, Trey, and obviously there are differing views on this. You can see in the meeting minutes from the Board of Governors meetings that there is a disagreement amongst the governors themselves. I think the majority right now are on the side of rate cuts, and some have been very publicly supportive of rate cuts. And obviously that is the open question. But I think what's important is the board should act. It can act. There's a history of great deference to the chair, which is not necessarily the way it has to be. It's not necessarily the way it's been set up. I think the majority, there are indications are on the side of rate cuts, and there's really not been a good argument laid out by the Fed chair as to why there haven't been rate cuts this year. It just keeps being something that amounts to, well, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. Well, let's wait and see is how we got inflation, how we raised the rates too late. So again, this is sort of the second time he's done this. He's not really going by the data in our view, and there's a number of Fed governors that agree with that.
All right, James, there was gloom and doom earlier this year about the stock market, and now it is like reaching record highs. So apparently all of the gloom and doom and the weeping and gnashing of teeth over tariffs, it hasn't barred investors because the market's hitting record highs.
No, that's 100% right, Trey. I mean, I think the market hit a record high 2 different times in the past week, at least, and I think it closed at a record high on Friday, if I'm not mistaken, or very close to it. And what does that tell you? I mean, that means investors are not holding back. They feel good about where things are. I think the tariffs, everybody knows what the tariff regime is at some level. Obviously, there have been deals struck as recently as today. There was a deal with what the average annualized return of the S&P 500 would be. So, again, there's really not an indication that the economy is softening in our view. So this is a public policy question that the president has raised, and he's having that conversation publicly. And importantly, I think that people deserve to see what's going on in the Fed. You know, I think there was a lawsuit filed saying that the Fed, the meeting should be open to the public. And they basically, the Fed responded and say, no, we can't have the meeting open to the public. Well, why is that? If there are competing views, European Union, but the president has been very forthright about the tariff regime, the market can price that in. And all of the prognostications that have been very negative about the Trump economy, right? It was predicted that tariffs would drive the market down. It was predicted they would drive inflation. It was predicted they would kill jobs. The opposite of all of that has happened. Inflation has come in lower than expected every single month of the Trump presidency. Jobs have come in higher than expected every single month of the Trump presidency. The stock market continues to go up. It's significantly up year over year, about on par.
हाय दोस्तों।
Alright.